Another pastor once told me that when you are reading Jesus' parables, in order to encounter God's great otherness and challenge for us, and ultimately God's unfathomable grace, when you read the parable, at least initially, you should put yourself in the position of the least upstanding character. So, for example, when we read the parable of the Good Samaritan, at least right away, we're not the Good Samaritan, the man who encounters his political or cultural rival on the side of the road, half dead, and runs right to him and dresses his wounds and puts him on his donkey and brings him to the hospital and pays all his bills. That's not us right away. When you read that, this pastor told me, he said, you should first think of yourself as the pastor who walks by the man who's half dead, the pastor who's just preached a good sermon and is feeling quite good about himself. Or you should be a worshiper who's just gone to church, or someone who's just made a large donation to a charitable organization, but now you're on your way to brunch and you have no time to stop for that person on the side of the road, so you keep walking. Or when you read the parable of the prodigal son, right away, at least, don't think of yourself as the father who's been waiting for his son to come home, looking out the window, hoping, praying, and then upon seeing his son, runs out with the robe and the ring and invites him in and throws the great big party. Unfathomable grace. Don't even think of yourself as the prodigal son, even though you all like to have fun and maybe have too much fun sometimes. Think of yourself as the older brother. The older brother who has always been working, keeping track of everything, doing everything that is asked for him, and keeping a tally of everything he is owed and everything everyone else is not. The older brother who attends that party, but simmers along the wall, resentful of God's grace. Now, I think these are easy associations for me to make, at least. I can identify with someone who passes by someone on the road. I can identify with those who are grumpy about people who don't get what they deserve. I can do both of those things when I read those parables. But today's parable, the parable of the wicked tenants, is a difficult one to identify with the least upstanding characters. Of course, in this story, the least upstanding characters are the tenants who have this piece of property, and people come to it, and they beat them or kill them. This is so extreme, violence like this. None of us are perfect. I'm not perfect. The history of this church is not perfect. We've all got this stuff, but I have not heard of violence being a real problem of ours here. On the other hand, my dad was principal of a little Lutheran high school in Mayer, Minnesota for 15 or 20 years. Part of his job was connecting with all the little Lutheran elementary schools that fed into the high school. So he would build relationships with the pastors and the principals of the elementary schools. We'd hear a lot of local gossip, which was fun. I remember hearing one bit of gossip. So the Lutherans in those parts had an old hymnal from like the 1940s, and then they updated the hymnal in the mid-80s. And you know about change, how hard change is. Well, the pastor of this little Lutheran church in Hamburg, Minnesota, or Hamburg, we said Hamburg, he checked his mail one day at church and opened up a letter from a parishioner. And in the letter, the parishioner expressed his deep anger about the new blue hymnal that they have, and the parishioner threatened to kill the pastor. No, I don't know if the local law enforcement was notified. Nothing became of it. There was no actual violence. I think the actual parishioner probably kept going to the church. You know, he would sit in the back and drink his coffee and roll his eyes and just be at church all the time, disgusted and angry. But there was no violence. No violence. I don't think violence is our problem, whether we're churchgoers or community members or family members. I think our problems are casual meanness, maybe, or thoughtlessness or irresponsibility or distrust or thinking you can control things that you can't control, or just sleepiness or not reading emails and deleting them. Kind of casual oversights. That seems to be the problem of life for folk like us, not beating and killing. So this is a strange parable to encounter. We're going to have to get a little metaphorical. Think about this as some symbolism. If we're not motivated to be less violent, because I don't think any of you struggle with violence as far as I can tell, then what does this mean to us? Well, in this story, we have people who have been given something wonderful. A beautiful vineyard. And people come to them and they don't show them any hospitality. Hospitality. What does that mean to us at 471 3rd Street in Excelsior? Well, this piece of property that we have here is probably worth a couple $1 million. And our church is not very big. I wonder if we could just sell all this and split the proceeds with the 90 or so people who are here, and we could all go on an Alaskan cruise together. Oh, we're not going to do that, though, because we're called to something greater than this, I think. So here we are in the heart of Excelsior, and you go down to Excelsior, and the shops and restaurants and homes aren't for everyone. They're putting up some condos, and the condos, I think, will sell for $1.5 million, $1.7 million. And I hope the tenants of those condos come into this church. And when they come here, they'll sit next to people who live in homes that are worth $300,000, $500,000, $700,000. And they'll talk. And those two groups of people will also come into contact with people who live in subsidized housing, or people who don't have a home, or people who are living in a halfway house. Everywhere out in the world, people live in their little pockets. But in here, people who are rich and medium and poor sit together, laugh together, sing together, weep together, rejoice together, eat together, drink together, and we realize that all of us, rich, medium, poor, are desperate for God's nourishment. Hospitality. What else does that mean to us? Well, it means you can come here as you are. However you look, whatever you think, whomever you love, you are welcome here. And this is expressed in our bulletins with that welcome statement. It's on the website. We are an inclusive church, but I have been to churches that have way better welcome statements than ours. These are welcome statements that are the outcome of months and months of discernment and meetings and self-loathing, great amount of thinking. And these welcome statements are written by the best writers, people who, when they're not writing these welcome statements, are writing books. I've been to these churches that have far better welcome statements than ours, and I go into these churches and I sit down and no one welcomes me. And that's not what we're like here. When you walk into those doors, we talk to you, we smile at you, we smother you. That's who we are. We've got a welcome statement, and it's very important, but even more important than any words that we use or beliefs that we have or ideologies that we express are our actions. The warmth that we live out in our welcome here at 471 3rd Street in Excelsior. So hospitality, what else does it mean to us? Well, it means that this church ultimately does not exist for any of us who are here right now, but it exists for the stranger who is yet to come. the new person. And a stranger will come here, and pretty soon they will become a part of this community. And then this community will stop existing for them too and start existing from whoever is not here yet. We are perpetually welcoming the stranger, the new person, the one who is not here. And that means that our spaces, our church, must be welcoming and beautiful, there for everyone. It must be an expression of resurrection, so that someone comes in here and they see freshness and change, and they feel as if this whole space has been created just for them to step through these doors, because it has been. So this sermon has taken a rather odd administrative turn. It's sounding more like a strategic to-do session in the boardroom, all the actions that we need to take. Doesn't sound much like the proclamation of the good news. So what is the good news for us in this strange, violent story about hospitality? Well, we're all sitting here together, 471 3rd Street, the tenants of the Congregational Church of Excelsior, UCC. And I don't think we're wicked tenants. We're warm and welcoming people. And more people keep coming. On a normal Sunday morning, we've got about 3 times as many people as we did 5 years ago. And this is going to continue. We're going to have more people next month, more people next year, more people the year after. And I hope that all of you will be here to welcome the new people who come here. Because in this story, in this parable, the great surprise is that the tenants could have welcomed Christ. Christ came to them. And just as surely, Christ is going to be coming to us in whatever new person or stranger walks through those doors next. In the young family that comes, that spills Cheerios and coffee all over our sanctuary and makes way too much noise. That'll be Christ. In the middle-aged person who's hanging on by a thread and just shows up here because a friend says, nothing else is working for you. Why don't you try going to church? That'll be Christ. Or in the 75 or 85 or 95-year-old person who's never been here before, who doesn't have too many years left of life, who could just stay at home doing the same thing over and over and over again, but says, I'm going to try something new. I'm going to try a new church. That'll be Christ. Christ is waiting to meet us somewhere out there, and Christ is going to come in here, and I can't wait to find out what Christ will look like with all of you. Amen.